What's happening, guys? We'll just give it a second here and then we'll get rocking and rolling. Hopefully everyone's having a great week thus far. We'll get started here in just like 30 seconds. Let Facebook do its thing a little bit. Like a glare or whatever on the screen. So I do have a little bit of time. So as you go through this, if you have any comments or questions, you can drop them into the comment section, and I'll do my best to get to them. I got to hop off probably 5-10 minutes after this, and I'll try to keep the live around the 10 minute mark here. If we do have some Q&A and stuff, I can go like 15 or 20. Just depends on how many people show up and if you guys have any questions for me. But we'll get going. So as you can see, and I posted either Monday or Tuesday, the topic today is all about consistency and how to be more consistent. And this is something that I see and hear, multiple times a day, multiple times a week, that people really struggle with consistency within their health and fitness journey. And I would argue that consistency is probably the most important thing in your health and fitness journey, and you could argue life as well, right? Because if you're consistent over a long period of time, you guys have probably heard me say this, if you're on the right path and you're consistent over a long period of time, you will eventually get to where you want to be. Then time is the only variable in that equation. It just becomes a matter of when you hit your goal, not if at that point, right? And I see so many people that reach out and say, I really struggle being consistent. I'll do well for a week, then life happens and I quit. I'll do well, I'll drop 11 pounds in 3 weeks, and then something happens and then I quit. Or I was doing really well and then life got really busy and chaotic and then I fell off. I stopped eating right, I stopped working out, and then I gained the weight back, and I essentially quit and got into a rut for 6 months and wanted to bury my head in the sand, right? So what I'm going to cover here, and my goal when I do these calls, when I do these lives, is number one, get your brain thinking a little bit. Look at things from a different perspective. Maybe approach things moving forward in a different lens, with which I'll get into in a sec. Hopefully save yourself time, energy, money, effort in the long run, and also walk away with possibly one, well, hopefully one, maybe two actionable items that you can utilize right away as you move forward. That's always the goal in everything that I do, okay? So we're gonna cover 3 things: why people struggle being consistent, why it's not your fault and it happens, and then 3, what you can do about it. So I have a little bit of notes that I want to work from, so I have a little bit more flow instead of just firing from the hip like I typically do. But one of the biggest reasons that I see why people actually struggle being consistent is when I hear that from somebody, 99.9% of the time, I can promise you, they're doing something that's very extreme, very restrictive, coupled with the fact that they have a very short time horizon for their goal as well. What do I mean by this? It's like, hey, I got a wedding in 2 months. I want to look amazing in the bridesmaid dress, and I got to drop 20 pounds. So they cut out carbs. They start running 5 miles every single day. They work out 6 days a week. They give up alcohol, whatever the case may be. They're doing very restrictive and extreme things, and it's no shocker that they can't be consistent with that, because most people can't, myself included. So more times than not, when you struggle with consistency, it's not that you're truly struggling with consistency, it's you're choosing the wrong path. You're doing something that's very, very extreme. And I'll get into what to do about that here in a second, but when people say they struggle being consistent, that's the problem most of the time. They're not doing things that are sustainable. They're not approaching things in the right way. They're doing things that are super restrictive that nobody could sustain over the long run. And with that shorter time horizon too, guys, the problem lies is, work with so many women who are type A high achievers, and you put so much pressure on yourself, which can be a double-edged sword. But the problem is, if you're trying to, drop 20 pounds in 2 months for a wedding or a beach vacation, if you screw up, or if you fall off for a couple of days, you're screwed. It's really hard to make up for lost time. So it just, with that short time horizon, it creates more pressure. In this case, within your health and fitness, pressure doesn't create diamonds. So Number one, that's why most people struggle being consistent, is because they're doing unrealistic things. They're doing things that are not sustainable. They're doing, fad diets, quick fixes, trying to lose his weight and get his results as fast as possible. That's the reason why. Secondly, why this is not your fault and why this happens is speed of results, and the shorter the time horizon is what sells in the fitness industry. Myself included. I can share personal stories that 4 or 5 years ago I was very guilty of this as well. My point being is, if you saw some type of advertising, or you're at Walmart and you saw this package of this nutrition supplement and it said, hey, if you take this pill coupled with hard work, discipline, and consistency, you can drop 30 pounds in 18 months. How much revenue do you think that product would do? I would guess zero. You might have one, Wahoo that actually, buys it, right? But I would guess that product, that would sit on a Walmart shelf for 5 years until eventually they just probably throw it away or it expires, right? Because that's what you see within the fitness industry, is selling you a result as fast as possible, which means, like I said in point one, is they're using very extreme restrictive measures to get you there. It's like, hey, I'll use ACG drops as an example. Like, literally, could go bonkers on that. I've talked to so many women who are like, yeah, I took the HCG drops and I ate less than 500 calories a day and I didn't work out, and that worked. And when they say that worked, they act surprised in their tonality of their voice. It's like, well, no, hell, that worked. You're eating 500 calories a day. You're essentially starving yourself. Of course that worked. But also, at this flip side, of course that wasn't sustainable, right? But that's why the fitness industry, the nutritional supplements and the fad diets like the Whole30, the Jenny Craig's, the Atkins, all the MLMs and stuff. And I'm not like, bashing anything. They wouldn't sell it if you guys didn't buy it, right? But you do. And that's why in the United States, over $1 trillion, look it up, is spent on nutritional supplements and fad diets every single year, because you guys can't help yourself. And I get it. That's human nature. You want results as fast as possible. And sometimes you don't care how you get there. And you have a very short time horizon. Companies capitalize on your ambition, right? It's just like, I'm sure in the past you dated a guy who wasn't a good guy and wasn't good for you, and your family and friends, had warned you about this person, but, for whatever reason, you really like them, if not love them, and they keep letting you down, but you keep going back thinking, oh, this time is going to be different. They're really going to change. I can tell in the tone of his voice, he's serious about this. And then it repeats itself. You just can't help yourself, right? Until eventually, hopefully, one day you gained the courage and you walked away from good and blocked him and never talked to him again, right? But like, it's the same kind of analogy or scenario that I see within health and fitness, that people deep down know, like, hey, cutting out carbs, eating less than 500 calories a day, running 10 miles a day, like, yeah, that can work, but I probably can't keep this up, the rest of my life. So that's one thing to keep in mind, again, is like, why you struggle being consistent is because, and it's not your fault, you're just inundated all the time with ads, TV, social media, you're at the store, it's, hey, do this, lose this weight in X amount of time. And it sounds very enticing, but it's just not sustainable. And that's why people do things, they can work, and then a year from now, they're in the same exact spot. Maybe they lost weight or whatever, maybe they didn't get any results at all, but then now, looking back a year later, they're lost with their time, and most importantly, they're probably lost with money, right? Like, it's the reason, and this is a crazy stat, but the average person in the United States from 18 until the day that they die spend over $100,000, $111,000 to be exact, on things within the health and fitness category. Now, you might sit there and say, Bo, like, that's not me. There's no way that's a true, like, look it up. Like, think of all the $50 products and $200 here and $400 on these super meals and all this and this class and that class and yoga and class pass and all these sorts of things over the years. And most times they didn't work because they were unsustainable and you couldn't keep them up, long term, right? So it's not your fault. You're constantly getting, hit with these things that are saying, hey, do this and we'll get you results in the quickest time frame as possible. And it works, but be smarter. Be the smart consumer. Understand that sustainability and consistency are very highly, correlated. And this brings me to my final point as far as what to do about it. One of our core philosophies at Bowmerly Fitness, I have a call with my coaches here in less than an hour. I guarantee I'll say this 3, 4, 5 times on that call with them. Every time I talk to a client or prospective client, I'll say this 3, 4, 5 times to them. Whatever you put in place within your health and fitness goal, whatever you decide to do, however you want your health and fitness routine and your approach in your life to look like, ask yourself this question. Can I say with a high degree of certainty that if I could see into the future 5 years from now, I could continue to do this? I could still be doing this. I'll repeat that because I feel like it's so important. Whenever you choose something to do within health and fitness, or you look at your routine and how you want the health and fitness aspect of your life to look, ask yourself this question. In 5 years, can I say with a very high degree of certainty that I could continue to do these sorts of things and approach it this way 5 years from now? Why people struggle with consistency is they do things that if they are very honest, that they know in 5 years from now, there's a very low, very, very low degree of certainty they could continue to do it, right? Like specific examples, someone spending $300 a month on, supplements or a fad diet, right? Like even if it works, do you really want to spend for the next 5 years, $1,500 a year? What's 15 times 5? Like 10, no, not quite 10 grand, 8,500, nine grand, do you really want to be purchasing this every single month? Probably not. Maybe right now you really want to lose weight and you're going out and running, 5 miles a day, 6 days a week. How certain are you that in 5 years from now you will be able to continue doing that? Again, probably unlikely. So whenever we build a program for a client, I talk to my coaches about everything that we put in place for the most part. Everything that we do, we want a high level of conviction and certainty that if we text this client or if we call this client 5 years from now, they could still be doing this. Let me give you some specific examples. So, steps, activity. That's something that's very easily controlled. It has a low barrier of entry. I know there might be some of you like myself that live, parts of the country where you do get crappy weather, 4 or 5 months out of the year. Not everyone has a treadmill at home. I know there's some outliers here, but I would say for 95% of people, increasing their steps and getting 10,000, 15,000 steps in per day is very realistic. And if they build that habit, that's something that they can continue to do years down the road. And that's huge. That might seem simple and not enough, but that is truly something that can be sustainable. Even if you live somewhere where the weather's really crappy and you don't have a treadmill, I know it might sound weird, but you could, get a Fitbit or whatever to count your steps, or you have an iPhone. You could just walk, fast walk in your apartment or house to get those in, right? Again, it might sound weird and maybe you don't want anyone to see you do that, but you could. So when we put step goals and try to increase someone's activity, anything that we can do in the natural flow of life is a huge win and is probably something that they can do 5 years from now. A real example based in reality, and I think I might have shared this a month ago, but we had a client, she lived by herself, divorced, kids were grown, and she had a couple dogs, and she had a call with her coach. This was 6-7 weeks ago. And, during COVID, she started working in a sedentary, worked at home and sits behind a computer 7, 8, 9 hours a day, has a very stressful job. And she became very sedentary because of that. She had 2 dogs, and they were just talking about dogs because Coach Jack has a dog as well. And he was telling me this on a call that she was talking about how she lets her dogs out, and they were talking, I don't know the exact topic of their conversation, but she was just mentioning that she just lets her dogs out and they go out and do their business. And he started asking her, probing a little bit, where do you live? What's the neighborhood like? You live in a cul-de-sac, how big is your neighborhood? Is it a housing addition, whatever? And she's like, yeah, it's about a quarter of a mile, around my neighborhood. There's, 30, 40 homes or whatever. And they were talking, and he's like, for the next couple of weeks, why don't we build a habit instead of just letting your dogs out in the yard and they go do their business? Why don't you just take, 2 times during your workday, a 10-minute break and just walk your dogs around the block? And she started doing that. And she was consistent with it. And she got her activity up and not only benefited herself, but her dogs as well, right? And she took her average steps from about 4,000 to 5,000 a day to over 10 just by doing that every single day. Really simple, but boom, immediately a simple adjustment from a coach brought her or doubled her activity. That's something, and again, I know you might say like, well, dogs, could pass away, whatever. I get that. But again, my point is in 5 years from now, that's something that she could build a habit around, make it a lifestyle, make it unconscious positive behavior, and does it automatically a couple times a day at the same time, once in the morning, maybe around after she has lunch, and go for a 15-minute walk. She lives in Florida, so it's nice all the time, so it's very realistic for her. So my point being is that's a very simple adjustment in someone's life that I can say here with the high level of conviction and certainty that she can continue to do that. If we reached out in 5 years from now and say, hey, so-and-so, are you still walking your dogs a couple times a day? If we work with her long enough and we build that habit into a routine, I can say with probably 90-95% certainty that is something that she can implement for the long haul. Simple, right? Nothing crazy. But simple wins. So that's one specific example that I said is from an actual client scenario. No matter how busy and crazy and chaotic life gets, everybody has, 15, 20 minutes, 3 or 4 days a week to get a resistance training workout in. Like we can build that habit. That's our minimum standard, 3 resistance training workouts per week. If someone says they don't have that type of time, I might have shared this before. I'll remember this, and probably until the day that I die. 6-7 months ago, this woman got on a call with her, and she's like, I don't have enough time. Like, I'm so busy. I work 80 hours a week. I have 3 kiddos. My husband needs this. We're remodeling the house. We got a trip coming up. She just kept going on and on and on. And she said, like, her number one reason holding her back was excuses. And then yet again, here she was making excuses as to why she couldn't, do anything. Right. And we were on a Zoom call and I was like, hey, grab your iPhone, go into like your settings, go to screen time. I want to see like how much you're on your phone per day. And she was on it like 5 hours. And I kid you not, she spent over, I think it was like an hour and 30 minutes on social media, from Instagram to Facebook, Pinterest. I don't think it was Twitter. But my point is she was spending an hour, almost an hour and a half a day on social media. And she's not alone. Like I think the average is like hour and a half. So she was like right there with the average. It's how you use and utilize your time. But the thing with her is what you feel like it takes to look and feel incredible is based on what you've done in the past. And I remember speaking to her, she's like, when I was right out of college, I had a good job. I was single. I hadn't met my husband. Obviously hadn't had kids yet. I would spend 5-6 days a week in the gym. I'd spend 2 hours there. I was playing like, volleyball 2 times a week. I was in a slow pitch softball league, and she was super active. And she's like, I was in incredible shape, but I can't figure out a way to get back there. And she kept on beating herself up like she feels like she needs to do now at like in her mid 40s what she did when she was 24. And I said, and I stopped her, and I was like, that's not going to happen. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, you're not going to be, right now, your reality based on your life, it's not going to be realistic for you to work out and approach health and fitness like you did when you were 23, 24 years old and you had all this free time because you didn't have kids, you didn't have a husband, and your career wasn't quite as chaotic and stressful at that point. You could spend 15 plus hours a week in the gym. You could take time to plan out your meals. You could spend more time cooking. And just the relief in her to realize like, oh gosh, but like what you feel like you need to do is based on past experiences, but her life and lifestyle didn't look like that as she did, 20 plus years ago when she was single right out of college. So you have to set realistic things. And that's why it is so important to have something that's truly tailored for you and to your lifestyle, because everybody's lifestyle is unique and different. And, just because you did something a certain way in the past doesn't, number one, mean that that's what you need to do presently and into the future. And it doesn't mean that you can't get in incredible shape, if not better than what you did, if you just get on a plan where you're working smarter, not harder. So I went way too long here. I just looked at the time. hopefully this helps. Again, I think there's no really actionable items here, but just to get you thinking and hopefully save you, time, money, energy, frustration on trying stupid things. So as far as consistency, the three main things that I had covered here is typically when you say you struggle with consistency, it's because you're doing crazy extreme things and trying to get results as fast as possible. So when you approach health and fitness, there's not a problem with setting goals that are, 2 weeks out, a month out. We set checkpoints with every single client I work with. But the longer you set for your time horizon, like if you take a person that wants to drop 30 pounds in a month versus a person that wants to drop 30 pounds in a year, I guarantee you that person that does that and drops 30 pounds a year, 2 pounds a month over 12 months, higher likelihood of being successful and a higher likelihood of doing something that's truly sustainable. So that's the first thing is you're probably struggling with consistency because you're doing crazy wacko things. Set your time horizon longer, takes the pressure off, and your chances of success increase substantially, and your chance of actually building a permanent lifestyle change increases substantially as well. The second point I make is it's not your fault. Like, you're inundated, that's what sells, unfortunately. You can call it good, you can bad. I would say don't judge it. It is what it is. But people want results as fast as possible. And to get results as fast as possible, you have to use extreme measures, very restrictive things, starvation, work out, like crazy. And of course, yes, that can work. We're not questioning that, but it's not sustainable. So that's why, you fall off, or you can't give up carbs forever, or you're not willing to spend $300 a month on supplements forever, and then you quit, and then you gain the weight back, and here we are again. And now you're just frustrated, and you hate fitness, and you're like, have a chip on your shoulder because you're out now time and money on something that didn't work, right? I get it. It's not your fault, but just be a smart consumer. The final thing is what to do about this, as I said, is like, no matter what you put in place, and start small. Like, again, I know going from like 5,000 steps to 10,000 steps in that example of a client we work with might seem very minimal and be like, that's huge. Compounding, getting 1% better every single day. Getting in double the activity and the amount of steps over the next 2, 3, 4 years could probably add years to that woman's life in the long term once she loses the weight and continues to move her body and stay active. So no matter what you do, ask yourself, hey, I'm going to do this now. Can I say with a high degree of certainty, 3 to 5 years from now, if I could look into the future, could I still be doing the exact same things I'm doing today? And if the answer is no, you're going to struggle being consistent. It's just a matter of time before you fall off and probably revert back to where you had originally started. So hopefully that was helpful. I know that was a long rant, but I think these things are important. Consistency is very important. It's something that we talk about, with our clients all the time. And the final thing I'll say, because it's important, I want to get this in, is like removing this all or nothing mindset. We work with women who put so much pressure on themselves to be perfect. And they've had success in their career and financially and relationships and, promotions and, their houses and their car. Like they've done very well in life by putting that, in some ways, putting that pressure on themselves and setting that high standard and bar for themselves. But the problem is with health and fitness is you don't need to be perfect. This all or nothing mindset, really screws people because they do well for a period of time. They go 110%, they give it everything they have, then they crash and burn as soon as they face some adversity or challenges or life gets crazy, right? And then they go to zero, where they say, screw it for 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 years. I've seen it. And they don't do anything. And they just further dig themselves in a hole. And then when they dig themselves in the hole, when they're digging, they're still like beating themselves up. They're crying. They're like, oh my God, I'm a loser. Like, why am I doing this? Like, I need to do something about my weight. Like, and they just keep going. And that pressure becomes way, way too much. So when it comes to health and fitness, consistency wins. And it's better to be consistently good than inconsistently perfect. Let me repeat this final thing, because if you're a client, you've heard me say this many, many times. It's better to be consistently good than inconsistently perfect. I'd rather have a client be at 80% compliance with our plan versus 100% for a week and then 0 for another week, and then be in that cycle. 80% slow and steady, wins the race. The story of the tortoise and the hare, right? So I went way too long. Hopefully this was impactful. Hopefully I added value. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. A lot of you guys will probably be catching this replay. I'll go through it later today and answer them. And if you need any help or you're interested in coaching, send me a message. You know how to get a hold of me. And hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Peace.